costs 12 cents to print a $100 bill. And the Federal Reserve Bank can print as many $100 bills as they want. They can create it out of thin air. Sears used to be the biggest company in the world. Nobody ever thought that Sears was gonna fail. For the average millennial, their biggest liability, biggest expense. If you start a YouTube channel to make money, you're doing it wrong.
I think it's about 1 in every 3 Americans cannot afford a $1,000 expense right now. That is a new stat that just came out, I believe CNBC. $15 trillion in consumer debt right now in America. So collectively, all Americans have around $15 trillion in consumer debt.
Quarter 2 of 2021. Actually, let's start back in 2020.
Yeah.
I know I cut you off right there, but this is an interesting point. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, we saw the biggest credit card pay down in the history of America.
Woo.
A lot of Americans were sitting at home because of the pandemic. They were getting checks in the mail, whether it's unemployment or stimulus checks. Some of them were also working, and so they were working and getting a stimulus check, but we had no expenses. You had mortgage forbearance, you had student loan forbearance, you weren't going out to eat, you weren't going on vacation. People were just sitting at home, they weren't shopping. And so people had so much extra cash. We saw the biggest credit card pay down in the history of the American economy.
I also believe we saw so many people putting more money into savings too than just about any time.
Investments blew up.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I mean, it was like magical. It pulled on my heartstrings. I was so happy.
We were like, finally.
I know, it was amazing. And then came 2021, second quarter of 2021.
Yeah.
It was the biggest credit card boom in the history of the American economy.
So when you say credit card boom, what do you...
The biggest increase in credit card debt. And I'm not just talking about spending. I mean credit card debt, where it's just money now, the balance that people owe on their credit cards. But I'm going to let you get back on with it. So credit card debt, consumer debt, you were on that. What else about America? America's broke?
Yeah, and just to go off of what you were saying there really, really quickly, I think that all the people were kind of, backed up from spending for so long that they were like, I got to spend more now. I haven't spent so much, in so long, right? So now I got to spend more time.
I got to make up for lost time. I got to make up for lost spending.
Yeah, but what I want to talk about first is just about, we've had this time of, kind of what we talked about last time, working hard and people making money, but yet they still get into debt. And, we can say, and what we always talk about is financial education and bringing it to that financial education. But what I want to go into first is I grew up and my parents always told me, you got to get a really good job. You got to work really, really hard. And a lot of Americans, we're taught that too. You got to work really, really hard. But then you go into school and immediately as soon as you turn 18, you have to take on student loans. At least that's the stigma that we're all taught. That's how we're taught to work hard. So I want to kind of hear your opinions on working hard. Are we teaching our kids wrong? Should we be teaching them differently should we be teaching them to be entrepreneurs, business, go into investing right away? What's your thoughts?
Well, can we go big and then kind of go deeper into it?
Sure.
Because you said America is broke and Americans are broke. So if we go from America to the Americans, let's go from the big to the smaller, because you said, parents' influence on kids. Let's talk about the economy, country influence on people, and that influence on kids. Because America, I know you were talking to me about this earlier today. You said the debt clock. What were we at? National debt?
Almost 29 trillion.
$29 trillion.
28.8 trillion or something, yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean? It means the United States government is spending money that they don't have. Now, the government's job is to maintain a well-functioning society. And so the United States government, they use money to pay for teachers, they use money to pay for roads, they use money to pay for infrastructure, they use money to, fund a whole bunch of things. And what's happening is the United States government is not a for-profit entity, right? Minority Mindset is a for-profit entity. We create content, people watch this content, and then we get paid. The United States government says, okay, if you make money, you can make money from your job, you make money from your business, you make money from wherever, you got to pay the government its fair share. So the United States government makes money when its people make money. It makes money through taxes. And so the United States government takes in X dollars worth of taxes every single year, and then they spend X plus 10 or 10 million or 10 trillion, wherever it is. They spend way more than what they take in. And so that's how the government works, and that's why we are in this sort of national debt crisis, where every 6 months or every year you hear talks about the national debt ceiling. Oh, the country's going to default, and then every single time they just lift the debt ceiling another time, right? I mean, it's like, what's new now? I mean, it's a big deal. The fact that we're at $28 trillion worth of debt.
But why is it a big deal? If we've got so much debt, why does it matter at this point that we have so much debt?
Because the money is fake. Mm-hmm. The money that they're spending is not real money. Back before 1971, our dollars were backed by gold, which meant that if the government wanted to print more money, they needed more gold. What do you got to do in order to create more gold? You need somebody to physically mine gold. Right. It took time, it took effort, and it took labor.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to print more money, what do you got to do? You just got to push a few buttons on the money printer. It costs 12 cents to print a $100 bill. And the Federal Reserve Bank can print as many $100 bills as they want. They can create it out of thin air. So you can create this money out of nothing, which dilutes the value of our dollar. And then they can spend money at will. And you just keep spending and spending and spending. And then you hit a point where eventually you realize that the dollar isn't worth anything. Every great civilization in history which debased the value of their currency has faced that. You go back to the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was based off of silver. They used to pay people in silver. The government paid in silver. And then what happened was the government wanted to expand the infrastructure. They wanted to hire more people. They wanted to do more things. So they started debasing their silver, meaning they started mixing their silver with other metals, cheaper metals.
Right.
And at first, the economy boomed. It exploded because now all of a sudden, people were able to get more money because the government had more money, quote unquote money, to pay out. So silver started being debased. But then eventually, you hit a point where people were like, well, this fake silver, this debased silver with other compounds isn't worth as much. So I need more money in order to afford things.
Right.
And so now you print more and they create more. And then eventually it led to a point where their money was worthless and the economy collapsed. You saw the same thing happen in Zimbabwe. You saw the same thing happen in the Weimar Republic, modern day Germany.
Right.
You've seen, everyone's seen those pictures of people, walking around with wheelbarrows full of cash. It was funny. There's like a joke which is not a joke, it's real. Someone would take a wheelbarrow full of cash to the local bread store, bakery, and they'd say, can I buy a loaf of bread? And they'd say, sure. Take the cash, just leave the wheelbarrow. So, it's like...
Yeah, no, I know.
The dollar, and you saw it happen in Venezuela most recently in 2018. And so it's... Obviously, the United States dollar is the world's currency. But you talk about what happens, when you keep racking up national debt, what does that mean? Well, in the short term, it doesn't mean anything because, people still believe in the value of the dollar. We're still the world's reserve currency. We're still the largest economy. We still have the largest military presence. The United States economy is still the largest and most powerful economy in the world. But you are reducing the value of the dollar every time you print another dollar. And you don't see a problem until it becomes a problem.
Right.
And right now, everyone's like, well, we can print more money. We are a growing economy. It's no big deal. Yeah, because that's where we are right now. But everything, every human, every living thing, every economy has a lifespan.
Right.
Every business has a lifespan. Even Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has come out and said that eventually Amazon will fail. We don't know when that's going to happen, but it will, right? Sears used to be the biggest company in the world. Nobody ever thought that Sears was going to fail.
Right.
It's bankrupt.
Not minority mindset, though, just to be clear.
Well, but Sears is gone, right? Sears. You go to Sears now, there's nothing there.
Yeah, I literally pass a Sears kind of on my way over into the office, and yeah, it's just like it's a
ghost town.
Ghost town.
No one spends money at Sears.
Yeah.
And right now, it's Amazon is the big thing, but Amazon's not always going to be the big thing. Everything eventually comes to an end, and the United States economy right now is the big thing, right? And eventually, it will not be. But if you want to extend your lifespan, because there's ways to extend your lifespan. Like if you are a person, you can extend your lifespan by eating healthy, by exercising, by taking care of yourself, by being happy. If you're a company, you can extend your lifespan by, managing your risk, by investing in growth, by investing in innovation, by, using your profits instead of just distributing all of your profits, by reinvesting it in the company, keeping cash reserves. And you can do it as a company by spending smartly, investing in the right places, and not overloading yourself in debt. Because the United States government, I know we're getting off track here, but this
is great.
You get me heated when you talk about this, because it's, it's crazy. The government wants more inflation.
That's what I was just about to ask. So why would the U.S. government want to do this? I mean, I like to think that the U.S. government, if you know this and I know this, I like to think that the U.S. government and the people that are sort of in charge of these things also know it. I mean, I like to think that they're not stupid and would crash our economy, right? I mean, lack of a better term, but why would the U.S. government, knowing this, if they know this, why would they just say, just keep printing, who cares?
The government and the Fed want more inflation.
Why?
It's a fact. The Federal Reserve Bank comes out all the time and they say that we're looking for more inflation. They say this, we're trying to hit a 2% inflation target, but then the way that they actually report their inflation is they take a certain inflation index. They don't look at the CPI. They look at a different inflation index. They take out energy costs. They take out food costs, and they look at the certain inflation numbers, and then they take out the high inflation numbers, and they take out some of the low inflation numbers, but they take out more of the high inflation numbers. That way, inflation looks like it's more stable than it is. So the Federal Reserve Bank looks at skewed numbers, and this is public information. They say this, that they create their own data, essentially. And then based off of that, they say, we need more inflation. And they say that they want more inflation because they want to produce cheaper dollars. Now, there's a difference between what the Fed says they want and a difference between what the government says they want. The Federal Reserve Bank, which is the central bank of the United States, although the Federal Reserve Bank is not actually a bank because you and I can't go there to deposit money. It's not a reserve because they don't keep any cash reserves, and it's not federal because it's just not a federal entity. This says so on his website. If you don't believe me, go check it out. But the Federal Reserve Bank, which is the central bank, is in charge of controlling the monetary supply in the United States. And what they do is they say that they want to create more inflation as a way to stimulate the economy, which it can, because if you are financially educated and you suddenly get access to more dollars, you can reinvest in more growth, and you can hire more people, and you can do more things, right? Because when the Fed talks about creating more inflation, they're pumping money into the markets. They're pumping money into big institutions. They give these institutions free cash that now they can reinvest. They can lend more money out. They can invest in other places.
That's if you're financially educated.
If you're financially educated.
If you're not,
you're paying the price.
Now you're going broke.
You're going broke every single day. Every dollar that you have in your savings account is worth less today than it was yesterday, because now when you want to go and pay for your rent, or you want to go pay for your groceries, you want to go pay for your vacation, it's going to cost you more money. Not because the actual intrinsic value of that thing is more, but the currency that you're using to buy it is worth less. That's what inflation is.
Right.
The government wants more inflation. Obviously, they say they want a stronger economy. Everybody wants to see a stronger economy.
Of course.
But the government, like you said, almost $29 trillion worth of national debt.
That's a crazy number.
It's nuts. But in order to pay that money back, they have to pay it back with dollars. And so if you buy a home, let's just say you buy a home that you can't afford, you buy a $1 million home, just for the sake of this example, and you're like, shoot, I can't afford this home. But then in a few years, you still own the home. Money becomes a little bit less valuable. So now $1 million doesn't seem like a lot of money. So now when you're paying back your mortgage, you're paying back your fixed rate mortgage with cheaper dollars.
Yeah.
So it's costing you less and less because you're earning more money. Your assets are worth more. And so your mortgage now is effectively costing you less, even though the amount of dollars you're paying hasn't changed, because the dollar that you're paying every single month, your $5,000 that you're paying every single month, doesn't cost you, doesn't feel as much, because your assets, your other income is worth more, is more because you're earning more money. So the government, who has almost $29 trillion worth of debt, needs more inflation, because that way they can pay back their debt with cheaper dollars. If we saw deflation happen, that would be good for the average person, because now all of a sudden your $1,000 that you have in your savings account can buy 3x more than what it can today.
But the government's paying more on
their bills. They got to pay more on $29 trillion worth of debt. They can't afford that. Are you crazy? Do you know how much $1 trillion is?
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, $1 trillion is a lot of money. A trillion. If you spent $1 million a day, and you did that every single day, we could go back in time to before the year 0, and you still wouldn't have hit $1 trillion. You got to spend $1 million a day every single day for 2,700 years.
And they've got 29 trillion of
29
that,
trillion.
so times 29.
So 2,700 years times 29. That's how long it would take you to spend $1 trillion if you're spending $1 million a day.
Man.
It's impossible to understand what $1 trillion is. It's fake money. It's not real money. It's just a piece of paper. It's digits on a paper, which is why you've seen this big movement towards cryptocurrency. You've been seeing people buying more and more gold, people understanding the value of assets. If you're financially educated, you're realizing like, holy crap, this is a big deal. Now, I do want to say another thing because
Sure.
I like to read a lot of books. I don't read them. I listen to them. But this talk about debt, national debt, has been going on forever. Warren Buffett's book, Snowball, is a good book, not just because he learned his investing methods, but you learn about history because, he's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And one of the things he talks about was when he was a young kid and, we're talking about like a very small amount of national debt. Everybody was freaking out about the United States defaulting when we had like less than $1 trillion worth of national debt.
I was going to say, how much was it back then?
I don't remember exactly the number, but it was like, it's nothing, not even $1 trillion.
Right.
And people would thought, oh my God, the United States is going to default. Now we're here at almost 29 trillion and the same questions going on. So, you got to understand that, we're lucky that we're the strongest economy. Obviously, we got issues with China growing very fast. As the faster China grows, the worse it is for the U.S. economy. But, eventually, I don't know when eventually is. It's impossible for me to predict. I don't know when it's going to happen. But eventually, you're going to hit a point where these dollars are not as valuable as people want them to be. We have lost 96% of the value of our dollars over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
96%. We're not getting that value back. And so America as a country, how do you now balance that? Well, we need to grow, right? So you have national debt, and then you have GDP.
Mm-hmm.
National debt is the amount of money the country owes. GDP is our economy, how much money our economy is making.
Right.
Debt is never an issue until it becomes an issue. If somebody has credit card debt, like you and I, we're financially educated. We talk about financial education. We know the pains and the problems that come with being financially stupid, right? I mean,
Right.
Credit card debt is very bad for you. It's great for the credit card company. But let's just speak on for the average person. Credit card debt is not a bad thing until it becomes a problem.
Right.
Which means if you can make your payments, hey, in society's eyes, there's no problem if you're in credit card debt. It's actually a good thing because now
Okay.
you have spent more than what you have. You've stimulated the economy because every time you spend $1, another business makes $1. So you make, let's just say, $30,000 a year and you spent $35,000. You have stimulated the economy by an extra $5,000 because you are willing to go out and take on this debt. Now, you got to make payments, but as long as you got the income coming in, there's nothing wrong. You're making your payments, you're spending money, you're growing the economy. The problem is, what happens when you lose your job?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you can't afford your payments or your payments balloon?
You go broke.
That's when we have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the problem it happens, right? It's not the fact that you have debt, which is the problem. It becomes a problem when it is a problem,
Yeah.
right? And so now we're in a weird point where our debt to GDP ratio is higher than pretty much ever. And so the question is now, how do you fix that? Well, you could try to reduce the debt, which is, trying to tell the government what to do is nearly impossible. Trying to tell them to cut down the spending, be more mindful of your money. We'll try to do more realistic things. Okay, so that's one thing you could do. And
Sure.
if we do that, that'd be great. But it's hard because that means you got to cut back on your expenses and you got to slow down and do all that. And nobody wants to see that happen because everybody always wants to see a booming economy. The second side is the GDP side. How do you grow the economy? And this is where, there's so many issues here where we have to change our school system. Our school system is so outdated. It teaches people to be factory workers when if we want to grow, we have to be innovative. The Chinese people are innovating so fast. They're creating companies left and right. We have to be more innovative as a society, as people, because if we are not, we're not going to be able to grow our economy. If you think about it like a company, the smaller a company is, a startup, the faster you can grow, right? You've heard of startups growing by 100% a year, 200% a year, because you're small and you can take more market share, you can grow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easier to go from 0 to 5 than 0 to 100.
Yeah, you can just grow faster, right?
Exactly.
When you're small. But when you're big, once you become Walmart or McDonald's, you're not going to see 100% growth in a year. You're going to see 2% or 3%, right? You're growing much smaller. That's why our GDP growth estimates, we're trying to grow by 2% a year. We used to grow by way faster, 10, 20% a year.
Yeah.
So now, how do we actually grow our GDP? We need to grow faster. And the government's answer has been stimulated. Cheap money, print money, cheap debt, which comes at a cost, right? More inflation. But the real solution is innovation. The real solution is now teaching people to be innovative, teaching people to be creative, because if people can become more creative, then we can produce more innovation, we can create more products, we can solve more problems. Entrepreneurship isn't about making money, it's about solving problems.
Right.
And the world has a lot of problems, and we can produce products, ethical products, moral products, which solve world problems, which will also help solve our economic crisis that we're facing. So what is the solution? We need more innovation. So I don't even remember what the question was.
Yeah, well, I want to go deeper into that too about innovation, because that's kind of how we started. So you went over kind of America's debt, and now we want to kind of go into the smaller scales. Remember, we started big, now we want to go small and talk about that education. So like I said, just refresher, I grew up, parents told me, work hard, work hard, work hard. It almost felt like I had to go to school to get a job because that was the only way to make money. I wasn't taught about investing. Nobody said you can invest. That's how you can make money. Nobody taught me that. Yeah. So I was taught I have to go to school, and then immediately, and not just me, millions of 18, 19-year-olds going to school, they take on debt immediately. Oh, they're starting off broke. Yeah. Now they're going into fields that don't make money. Now they're not making their payments. Now they're broke. They've got student loans. They're 20 years old. They're 22 years old.
You want to know what's crazy about what you just said? So for the average millennial, their biggest liability, biggest expense is student loans.
I believe it.
Do you know what the biggest asset for the United States government is?
Student loans. Oh, I don't
student
like
loans.
That.
This is you can research this if you don't believe me. I mean, this is a fact. Mm-hmm. The United States government is making so much money out of student loans that it is their biggest asset. Now, here's something that's going to sound crazy, but going to college used to be very, very, very valuable because not everybody had a college degree. Mm-hmm. You could think of it kind of like dollars. When there was less dollars out there, each dollar was worth more. As you print more dollars, as everybody has more dollars, the value of each dollar goes down. You dilute the value of a dollar. College degrees were kind of the same way. Back when a lot of people didn't have college degrees, every single college degree was worth a whole lot more because it was like, oh, wow, you have a college degree? Let's give you a job.
Now there's inflation of college degrees.
Yeah. Everyone has a college degree.
Yeah.
So employers look at you and they say, you're just like everybody else.
It's the baseline.
It's the baseline. And what's crazy now is back in the day, getting a college degree, one, wasn't as expensive. And if you needed to borrow money, it wasn't guaranteed. You had to prove that you were a good investment. Then the government came out and said that we want to give everybody access to a college education. The government guaranteed student loans. They said no matter who you are, no matter what you come from, no matter where you come from, you can get access to the government's money so you can go to college. All you got to do is pay us a little bit of interest, which is actually kind of high interest. It's higher than what you're going to pay for a mortgage, which shows you what we more value, home ownership over education, but that's a separate topic. The government said, we're going to guarantee your money. Now, at face level, it sounds great. Get everybody educated. Get everybody access to student loans. Get everybody access to college. But what colleges did is they heard that and they said, you're telling me that you, the government, are going to guarantee that you're going to pay us, college, no matter how much money we charge? Music to my ears. So then colleges raised the price of the tuitions. They raised the price of everything. Everybody kept paying because the government guaranteed it. Wow. Now we're starting to see a shift, right? Because our generation, the millennial generation, and the ones younger than us are graduating with an insane amount of student loans, realizing that people can get jobs without a college degree. And especially after the pandemic, I mean, if we focus just on education, you had people paying 40, 50, 60 grand a year for college that they're now just watching virtually. Why the heck are you paying so much money just for a name? And people are starting to realize that.
YouTube University.
YouTube is free.
Yeah.
And you can learn from people that are actually doing it. And this was one of the biggest like breakthroughs for like YouTube and education, because people realize like, dang, I'm learning from a college professor who's never started a business, who's teaching me how to build a business, right? Versus I can go to YouTube and look from somebody who's built a $25 million business and learn marketing from them just because they're making videos on it, or they're walking me through it. Or I'm learning from real estate investors. I walk through real estate deals. and there's so much education. I mean, dude, you can learn so much on YouTube. When I was studying for my bar exam, I slept through a lot of classes. So I needed to learn some things that I didn't know. So I went onto YouTube.
Yeah.
And I would search up topics. And the cool thing about YouTube, from a teacher perspective, is the people that teach on YouTube aren't being forced to do it for a paycheck, because you don't start a YouTube channel to make money. If you start a YouTube channel to make money, you're doing it wrong, because you can't. It's so hard to actually make money on YouTube, and it takes a long time. And so people don't start YouTube channels because they're like, oh, I'm going to get rich from YouTube. It doesn't work like that, because if you think like that, you're not going to make money.
I was going to say, well, some people do, they just don't have success.
And they don't make any money. It's just, that's what happens when you kind of like make it controlled by people, right? Because people watch who they want to watch. And so now if you're a teacher that's just in it for the money, people are going to watch you and they're going to say, well, your stuff sucks and I don't like what you say. I'm going to go to somebody else.
Right.
So you have teachers who actually love what they do, that are doing what they teach, and they're putting their content out there, and you can watch it for free on YouTube and start learning. And now it's like, hey, I don't like your style. Let me learn from this person who can teach me better. When I was in college, I took calculus, and my teacher had such a strong accent, who sucked at teaching. Not only could I not understand what you were saying, I didn't learn anything. And it was so dumb, because we took a college calculus exam. Mm-hmm. I loved math. I love math. Obviously stereotype, I'm brown, I like math. No, I enjoy math, because not just because of the numbers, but because of the way it makes you think. I love that about math. I had an amazing math teacher in high school. I loved it. I came to college. I took a calculus class, Calc 2. The professor sucked at teaching. I couldn't even understand what they were saying, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having an accent. It's just like I couldn't understand what you were saying. But then when we took our exams, if you got like a 48% on the exam, that was like an A+. I got a 39% one of my exams, and I got like an A- on it. And I was like, what did I learn? I don't even know what I put down on this piece of paper.
Right.
Versus now you can go to YouTube University and you can learn from somebody who actually loves what they teach, and they're going to put their passion into it because they like what they do. And if you don't like their style, you don't like what they do, just watch somebody else. I never had that option. If I had a bad teacher, I'm stuck now.
Yes, because sometimes only one or two teachers teach that one subject.
If it doesn't fit within your time, I mean, the world is changing. Education is changing, and it is so important. And the thing that's going to be the slowest to change is going to be people, because people are resistant to change, hesitant to change. Why are people so scared of? Why were people so scared of the internet? Because
it was new.
It was new.
It was unknown.
Right. I remember this is a long time ago. This is back. I mean, this is before 2000, and 2001 was really when the internet boom started happening. But before 2000, I was talking to my dad about buying something on the internet, and my dad was like, "Are you crazy? Like, it's a scam. Don't do that. You can't put your credit card, or I don't even know if it was a credit card. I don't remember how payments were done by then. Maybe it was a debit card or whatever. You can't put your information out there. It's so bad." now I only shop online. I don't like shopping in person, you know.
We used to never talk to strangers on the internet, and now we have Discord communities full
I
of people
know.
we've never met in real life.
I used to be on an AIM person.
Yeah, I remember.
There used to be a chatbot, Smarter Child.
Okay.
I used to talk to Smarter Child, and I was just because that was like your first experience to like Alexa or Siri, someone you can like ask questions to, and I was like, hey, Smarter Child, like. I don't even remember. I would just say like dumb things. I was like, a
how's the weather today?
Yeah, how's the weather or whatever, and they would respond to you. And like I remember, like my parents didn't understand. They were like, "Don't do that. That's bad. You're giving them information." Blah blah blah. But now it's like I got an Alexa in my room.
Right.
I got
in almost every room. Like
yeah, you're. I mean, it's just world has changed. Times have changed. But the thing that's the slowest to change, it's people. And so when we talk about education, we're so ingrained with this idea that the way you become successful is go to school, study hard, get a good job. There's nothing wrong with getting a job, okay? There's no shame in a job. There's nothing wrong with it. Not everybody's meant to starting a business. Not everyone's meant to start a business. Starting a business is very hard. For the majority of people, you should not start a business, okay? It's just very hard. And there's nothing wrong with getting a job. But the way you get educated is changing. Because the education that we need is changing.
Right.
The education that we need is not just like it's funny. What is gen ed requirements, right? What are they called when you go to college? You have to take these like random classes in order to graduate. Is it gen ed?
Yeah, gen ed.
And it's like
science and math, and
those are good classes.
Yeah,
science and math is good. But you got to take these random. My brother, he was telling me that he took this. I can't believe I don't remember what the class is. Something about like dance education. Something just has nothing to do with anything. Nothing to do with anything he cared about. I was like, why are you taking this class?
He has to.
I needed to graduate. I was like, how many credits is it? 4. I was like, how much is it costing you? I was like, you know you're paying $1,000 a credit, right? Yeah. You're paying $4,000 to take a class on dance history. And I don't remember if it was dance history or whatever it was. I had to take those classes, but I slept through them. But it was like a nap for me. It was a very expensive nap. Now, look, there is a time and place. There's value in being well-rounded, okay? Ignorance in society is why we have so many issues. That's why we have racism. Anybody who says racism doesn't exist has not walked a minute in my shoes or anybody else's shoes. I have been called names. I have been punched. I have been hit. I have been spit on. Ever since 9/11 especially, I have experienced racism in so many different ways. Just look at it, YouTube comments. You have racist, people that just say dumb things.
It's
Racism
terrible.
exists.
It's terrible.
You have people that hate people for the way they look. You have people that are ignorant about money. You have people that are ignorant about so many different things in society. And how do you fix that? Well, it's education.
Right.
We have to be educated.
So where does that education start, though? Because like I was saying kind of at the beginning, kids grow up, they go to school, and obviously they don't know any better to go through. So are you saying it starts with the parents, or is it on the school system to kind of teach? Like, actually, you don't have to go to college after 12th grade if you don't want to. You're a senior in high school. You don't have to go to college if you don't want to. Is it on them to teach it, or is it the parents?
Can you blame the school system? They don't know any better. Why doesn't a teacher teach kids how to become a millionaire? Because they're not a millionaire.
Right.
Why don't teachers teach kids how to become wealthy? A lot of them are not wealthy. Right? I mean, you can't teach something you haven't done that you don't know. Blaming the school system, the school system has to change. We have to preach, we have to teach creativity, teach innovation, teach that it's okay to be wrong, teach mistakes.
Critical thinking.
Right? You have to teach people to make mistakes. That's where a school system can change, is to teach people to think outside of the box, more collaborative work, teach people to create and to think. Then what do you actually learn? It's okay, is it the parents' fault? Look, I used to teach in Detroit Public Schools, guest teach there every single week. I love Detroit. The school system in Detroit sucks. It's unfortunate, man. These schools are so run down, man. Teachers are struggling there. A lot of these kids barely have money to eat. Some of their parents are caught up in drugs or prostitution, or it's rough, man. I used to go talk to these kids, and they don't see anything else. To them, it's normal.
Exactly.
Right? Some of these kids, I was talking to the teacher, became close to the teachers, and he's like, talk to these 2 kids. They're getting caught up in gangs. So I'll go talk to them, and they're nice kids, man. They're smart kids. They're hardworking kids. They just don't know any better.
Right.
Now, can you blame the parents? Well, okay, yeah, sure. Let's blame the parents. Why don't you teach your kids any better? Their parents didn't know.
They don't know any better either.
And so you get stuck in that cycle. But thank God, whatever you believe in, for YouTube. Because now the internet has opened up the ability to expose yourself to something very different. Before, it was only through books, which is a little bit harder to access, because if you want to watch a book, look, reading is hard. I suck at reading. Mm-hmm. You got to go out of your way, find the right book that you want. You got to read it and understand it, and then, and that's it. With YouTube, you can join a community, right? You watch Minority Mindset, you can join our Guac Talk community, free Discord server. That's in the link in the description, by the way. But you join the Guac Talk server, and now all of a sudden you're around a whole community of Minority Mindset thinkers, people who want to be better financially, people who want to be better with their money, people who want to build wealth. Build a new community. But it started with the education on YouTube, right? And so who do you blame? Man, it's not that easy. You can't just blame one person, one entity. The reality is the world is changing. The world is changing faster and faster thanks to the internet, thanks to technology. And if we don't change ourselves, we are going to get stuck behind. And so
I
now
completely agree. Yeah.
It comes down to the people, right? It's you need to just get that spark where, okay, I want something better for my life. You go to YouTube, you search, how do I live a better life? How do I get motivated? How do I be more efficient? How do I manage my money better? There are so many great channels on every single thing that you want to learn. And now you start learning, you start exposing, you can start picking and choosing your teachers. Some people are going to watch this, they're going to hate me. They're going to say, oh, I don't want to learn from this ugly guy. But it's people are they're going to find whatever they want, and you can start learning from real teachers. Education is the backbone from success, but this education is not going to come just from the classroom.
That's what I was going to say. I think the problem is, though, that people have to search that. They have to find that themselves, right? So especially in some of these areas where financial education or just education in general is not seen as a priority, now you've got certain areas where people are getting into debt, drowning in debt, they're going broke, and then at the end of the day, they don't know where to find financial education. They've never even heard of it before. So you obviously say you can go to YouTube and things like that, but it's never been a priority. And the school system isn't teaching it either. So now it's on each individual person to find that education. They have to make that effort. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah,
so people have to make that effort.
You know what sucks? What's crazy is you have a lot of industries out there that profit off of your financial stupidity. Mm-hmm. The more financially dumb you are, the more money your bank makes, the more money that certain corporations make.
Well, yeah, you just mentioned credit cards. If you use credit cards right, then you can be very successful with them. Yeah. But if you use them wrong, you're going to run into a lot of problems.
I only use a credit card.
Yeah.
I don't have a debit card, and that's kind of bit me in the butt because I needed to pull some money out of an ATM because for whatever reason. But I don't have a debit.
You should get at least an ATM card or something.
I need to get. Yeah, I gotta think about that. But I don't have a debit card.
Sure.
That might change. I might have to get an ATM card or something just in case for these emergencies, because it's happened once where I needed cash because I had to pay somebody and they didn't accept anything. But whatever. So, but right now I only have a credit card.
Right.
And I try to only pay with credit cards when I can, because credit cards give me purchase protection. They give me fraud protection. They give me perks. They give me cash back. And so, is it going to make me rich? No. But I've made a decent amount of money through my credit cards because I spend money and I might as well get paid for the money that I spend. And I get protected because now if you have cash, you have $1,000 in your wallet, you get robbed, someone takes your cash, that cash is gone. You're not getting that back. Right. Are you serious?
Yeah.
But if someone takes my credit card and they go swipe it, which has happened, I've had my identity stolen, which sucks. But I've had, they took they spent $4,400 or $4,500.
I was going to say, I've had it happen too, but not like that.
They took $4,500 or something like that from my account, from my credit card. I called up, this was MasterCard. I called them up, told them what happened. Within 24 hours, that cash was back in my account. And then they fought to figure out who this scam was. Yeah, I had to fill out some paperwork and do all that, but I got my money back.
Right.
You're not going to get that back with cash. No, financial education, right? So your question was, So now you go out, enter the real world, you start spending money, start doing things, you get into credit card
yeah,
debt.
basically, yeah. You're having all these problems, and now you've got to kind of solve it. So it kind of is almost counterintuitive because you're not taught about it. Now
But you have to be interested in it. See, our job, like for example, our job here at Minority Mindset, I don't make videos to make you like. You have a whole spectrum of people. You have on one end people that are super involved with their money, that are very educated about money. You have the middle ground where, yeah, I'm interested. I want to be more involved with my money and I want to learn and I don't really know what's going on, right? You have the gray area. Then you have the other side where I don't care. I don't care. Our job is not to take I don't cares and say you need to care because that's impossible, right? We're here to put out education for the people that want to be better with their money.
Right.
If you want to be better with your money, we provide that resource for you. You can watch your videos for free. You know, it's a free country. You have the freedom to be broke. You have the freedom to be in debt. Now, if you don't want to be in debt, you have the education to get out. The thing that sucks, though, is when you don't want to be stuck in that situation, but you learn about the education a little bit too late.
Exactly.
Luckily, there are ways out.
Yeah.
Luckily, with the right education, you can work your way out. Luckily, thanks to the government, you know, there are things like bankruptcy, which allow you to work your way out, hate it or love it. I mean, that was why it was created as a tool to allow you to start over. Wealthy people do it all the time. So
Except for with student loans, yeah.
Except with...
and like you just said, that's one of the biggest problems with millennials,
Yeah.
and one thing that the government loves.
Does that make sense to you? That the student loans are the only debt. Federal student loans are the only debt that you cannot bankrupt your way out of.
Why is that?
Because the government doesn't want to lose their money, and they're the ones that created it, man. What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
They create their own rules. If you're going to borrow from the government, they're going to put their own rules on you on how to do it.
But there's other types of loans, yeah, that you can take through the government, and that's different.
Maybe the government realizes how risky of an investment it is, so they need to protect their, you know what, by not letting you bankrupt your way out. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And that is, I don't know how we're gonna solve that problem. We talk about what was it, like canceling student loans. Do you know what that means, to cancel student loans?
Yeah, go ahead.
The government doesn't have money to pay off these student loans. That money has to come from somewhere. We're already in $29 trillion worth of debt. So the money means the government has to print that money with the help of the Federal Reserve Bank, create that money, and now inject this $1 trillion+ and pay off these student loans, which means now more inflation, which means higher taxes because they got to pay off more debt, which means they're going to need more revenue to do that. So how do you fix the student loan crisis? Man, that is one crazy, like...
Well, I think kind of like you mentioned, we're kind of seeing a shift now between, you know, people realize that they don't have to go to school for everything. They don't have to have that higher education to get a job that they might have previously thought they needed higher education to do. The problem is, though, there is a ton of jobs that you still have to go to school for and get hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. You can't do clinicals on YouTube.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. you know, if you want to be a doctor, an attorney, an accountant, you want to get a professional degree, you need college. And it's going to be a weird transition right now because over the next decade, you're going to see colleges go bankrupt because more and more people are realizing that their college degree isn't worth it. Millennials who went through it are having kids, and they're going to tell their kids, hey, I'm still paying off my college debt. I can't afford your college debt. You can get a job without a college degree. And more companies are not requiring college degrees. They're just looking at your experience. They want to see what certificates you have. I mean, you can go out and get a certificate or get experience in a certain field for a whole lot cheaper than a college degree. So you're going to see a shift, and as you know, some smaller colleges, which are not the best funded, they're not getting enrollment anymore. You're going to see colleges go bankrupt. So there's going to be a shift in that education.
Yeah.
But for the people that, you know, want to be doctors, attorneys, accountants, engineers, where you need that degree, it's going to be a tough shift because, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to pay that price. You're going to have to maybe take on all that extra debt. Look for alternatives which are cheaper because there are some colleges that cost less than others. But it's going to be a transition until colleges have to start lowering their prices.
Yeah.
And that will probably happen. I mean, technology has allowed prices of things like TVs to come down. Why are TVs so much cheaper now than they were before? I remember back, if you wanted to buy a nice TV, you were going to dish out thousands of dollars if you wanted a big screen TV, especially a nice one.
So, yeah, when flat screens first came out,
yeah,
it was like, whoo.
They were expensive.
Yeah,
now,
everything.
The TV we have in the office right here is a 42-inch. I think I paid like $300 from it.
It's great TV. It's smart TV.
It's a smart TV. And why have TV costs come down? Just thanks to technology and innovation, which made, TVs easier to make and cheaper to make. College is going to probably go through a similar lifespan where less and less people are going to see the need for college. You're going to have less demand for people wanting a college degree. And you might see in our lifetime, colleges say for the first time in history, we're going to have to lower our tuition costs.
Yeah.
And that would be a huge shift. And, it's just my theory. I think that you are going to see that happen, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
How do you think that will affect people getting jobs after they sort of get this college degree? So one thing in particular that I was thinking about when you were talking about this was teachers. Teachers go to school and they get and they go to school and some of them take on debt, and now they've got $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in student loan debt. Not as much as a doctor because you don't have to go to school as long, but they've got student loan debt too. But now they get out of school and their first job is paying not enough.
$25,000 a year.
Not enough to cover their student loans, let alone the other bills they have. We're talking rent, utilities, healthcare. What can people do? But I want to kind of hear your thoughts on sort of how this sort of shift in people going to school or lack of going to school and college tuition costs will affect jobs after they graduate.
I don't know how it will affect jobs. I mean, the jobs will still...
Or wages, rather.
I don't think it will have a major effect on wages because an employer doesn't employ you based off of how much money you had to spend to get your job. It's based off of the value that you provide. Now, if you're providing more value, yeah, you can make more money. If you're providing less value, you're not going to make as much money. I mean, for example, let's put real jobs on this. Mm-hmm. A cashier at McDonald's makes less money than a professional NBA player. Why? Not because you don't need a degree to be a cashier, but because of the amount of value you provide as a cashier. You have 1 billion people on this earth, even more, that could do the cashier job at McDonald's. You have a very few amount of people that can actually make it pro at NBA. If you make it pro in basketball, you are going to make more money than a cashier at McDonald's. Now, if it cost $30,000 to become a cashier at McDonald's, is McDonald's going to suddenly pay you more money because you needed to become a cashier? Probably not, unless you see more regulations come out saying that you have to pay them more money. But from a value perspective, McDonald's is going to say you're not providing any more value. And so unless the change is that, hey, there's less cashiers out there because there's a higher barrier to entry to become a cashier, then they're going to have to pay you more because there's a smaller supply of people that can be cashiers. But if everybody had to do that, then it doesn't make a difference. So is it going to affect wages? No. Wages are going to be affected by the value that you produce. The more value you produce, the more money you will earn.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So kind of going into the second half of the conversation now. So people, obviously, like we started, the United States government is in debt, but more importantly, Americans are in debt.
Like I said, more important. They're both important.
There is $15 trillion in consumer debt right now.
Wow.
So we've got a ton of people that are drowning. What are some things that people can do to start getting themselves out of debt?
Get financially educated. I mean, there's two things you can do. I mean, one is just with the money that you have, you use your money smarter. Mm-hmm. You stop spending so much money so you have more money to pay down your debt, because if you have especially credit card debt, high interest debt, you want to pay that off as fast as possible. Now you need to, that is skinning you alive.
And what do you consider high interest?
Man, nowadays in this economy, if it's really anything over 6%, 7%, it's high interest. Like you can get a mortgage for 3% right now. So if you're paying 7% on something, that's a high interest.
Yeah.
But if you are paying, especially credit cards, you're paying 15, 18% a year in APY on your credit card debt, you got to pay that off fast because that's skinning you alive. Mm. But on the flip side, you can also earn more money. And you might need to if you want to pay down that debt faster, which means, all right, I'm making $30,000 a year. I got $10,000 worth of credit card debt. What do I do to pay this off? Because it's going to take you a long time. Even if you live very small, it might take you a long time to pay it off. So if you want to pay it off faster, hey, you can earn more money. And thankfully, thanks to the economy that we're in right now, thanks to the environment, thanks to technology, there are so many ways for you to earn money outside of your job. Even if you don't want to start a business. Because, we've talked about business before. I'm just going to ignore that. But you can go out, start driving for Uber, start driving for Lyft. You can start delivering groceries for Amazon Fresh. You can deliver food for Grubhub. You can deliver food for Uber Eats. And if you don't want to be in that side of things, then you could, there's like physical labor things. There's like apps out there where people who want to move, they're looking for somebody to lift some heavy stuff, or if you have a truck, you can move things in your truck. Or if you don't want to do that, then you can do digital freelancing work. You can work on Fiverr or Upwork, and you can be a writer. You can be a graphic designer. You could be a video editor.
Using that creative skill.
There's so many ways. Everybody has a skill, okay? Everybody has a skill. And there's so many ways for you to monetize that you just got to know where. And thanks to the internet, it's become so much more accessible, because back in the day, let's say you were a good graphic designer and you wanted to get a side hustle making money as a graphic designer. You would have to knock on doors. You'd have to go to the yellow pages, call up businesses, see if they wanted a graphic designer. And it was hard, because then they'd have to hire you on as an employee a lot of times. Or you'd have to really work out a deal where, you're just doing it as a side gig.
Right.
Thanks to the internet, man, it is so much more accessible.
Yeah.
Like anybody can do it, and you can pick your own hours. Like we have dozens of freelancers that work for us here at Minority Mindset. Some of them that we've never met. We've met some at financial conferences.
That was awesome.
They say, hey, we write for you. And I'm like, oh, no way, that's awesome. And they get paid consistently. They can work their own hours. They can work when they want. They can, as long as they're producing the work, we give them deadlines. And then they get the work done on their own time. A lot of them are working their own jobs.
Right.
And so there's so many ways now for you to earn more money. Is it easy? No. You got to put in the work. Just like with anything else, it's hard. But once you get past the initial hump, hey, now you have the opportunity to do a whole lot more. You start earning more money. Now the question is, why are you earning more money, right? If you're taking this extra cash and you're going out and you're buying new Gucci belts and you're buying new expensive sunglasses, you're going on fancy vacations, you're doing yourself a disservice. You should be using that money to either pay down this high interest debt, pay down your debt faster. You should be using this money to buy assets. You should be using this money to build your first savings account. I mean, there's so many things that you could do with this money that you need to be doing. That way you can actually build your wealth instead of just making everybody else around you rich.
I completely agree. I think it's really tough for people, though, to understand that once they get a raise or they get more money or they work on that side hustle, we've got this stigma in culture today that you want to look rich. You've got to, get a better house, get a better car. You got to treat yourself, right? I got a raise at work. I'm going to go buy that, that really expensive thing that I want, right?
It's normal. You got to get that boat.
Exactly.
Everybody's got to get a boat when they get a raise for some reason. I don't know why, but American people love boats.
I got to float.
I don't know. I don't really like boats. I've been on a few cruises and it's cool.
But they're expensive to maintain, though. I was down in Florida like a couple months ago, and we were talking to some people down there, and they were telling us about kind of the yacht market. Okay, and the yacht market is the biggest, they were saying it is the biggest scam of all time, because the thing is, some of these millionaires and billionaires spend $1 million on a yacht, but now you didn't just buy a yacht, you've got to have a captain. You've got to have a food crew. You've got to have a crew to run it. So now you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just to run your boat. And small boats are the same. You've got to fuel it. And for most of them, and this is going off of what millionaires do, different lifestyle, they sit there in the dock and it just sits there. $1 million in the water.
Well, it's good for the economy.
It's good for the economy.
It gives people jobs. and especially if we're talking about billionaires, hey, that's great.
Yeah.
They talk about redistribution of wealth. That's the best kind of redistribution of wealth, because they're spending more money, giving more jobs out there. So, if a billionaire is spending dumb money, hey, I think it's great.
They spend a lot of it.
I think it's great. Let them keep spending money. And, I've never owned a boat. I don't know if I will. I don't really have any aspiration to own a boat right now, but it's people want to look rich.
Yeah.
To answer that question, people want to look rich, and a
Yeah.
lot of times what we do is we sacrifice our actual richness, we sacrifice our actual wealth, in order to look rich and appear rich.
Yeah.
You have the same issue in the Indian culture, man,
Mm-hmm.
because Indian people are cheap, and they are not cheap in two places: education, weddings. When it comes to education, they will spend money if they don't have money on books and whatever you need to learn. It's just, that's the culture.
Right.
The second place where they're not cheap is weddings. And like a standard Indian wedding nowadays, man, you're going to spend at least $100,000.
Ooh.
It's not even playing. And that's a smaller wedding nowadays. You're going to see people blow crazy amounts of money. And there's a whole industry of people lending money for weddings, specifically Indian weddings. And
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a booming business because they know that this is the time to shine. You got one kid that's going to get married. They're going to get married once, hopefully only once.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to have this big grand wedding, and this is the time where you show off. This is this part of the culture where you're going to show off your everything during this wedding. Now, if you want to have a big wedding, nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
You work hard to do what makes you happy. You work hard, you earn money, you're smart with money, so you can do something that makes you happy. But it becomes an issue now when you are going to be paying off this wedding for the next 25 years. And so this is the time where people want to show off. They want to have all these nice things.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I love it. It's great. I used to work in the wedding business. The more you spend, the more I used to make. There's nothing wrong with spending money. There's nothing wrong with spending $1 million on a wedding if that's what you want, as long as you can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
But now when you're going into debt for a weekend wedding, and then you got to pay this off. I mean, this couple is now, or especially if it's paid for by the couple, and now the couple's going into debt. You're starting your new life off together. You might have student loans, and now you also got a $100,000 worth of wedding debt that you're going to be paying off for the rest of your life, and all you got out of it was a photo album. You kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you serious? Do not go into debt to do these things. If you're going to borrow money, buy something that's going to make you money.
Yeah.
We need a real shift where you got to stop wanting to just look rich and become rich. Once you get rich, buy whatever the heck you want.
A yacht, for instance.
Buy a yacht. It's great. I mean, dude, if you got money, go and spend it however you want.
Right.
Ellen DeGeneres, she bought some car. I don't know, this is years ago. She bought some car. It was a really expensive car. And everybody freaked out. Oh, you shouldn't use your money to buy cars. You could have done X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Spend your money how you want, because then you make your money. And if you want to really, inspire people to, give and do all these other things, be rich and do it yourself. I believe the more you have, the more you can do. The more you have, the more you can give.
Money's a tool.
I agree. But you got to, you earn that right of what you can do. And that's what, you need to understand money to do that.
Isn't it kind of counterproductive, though, to think if people don't get into debt, if people don't spend money, we kind of started before talking about the big in America, then they won't stimulate the economy. If people don't spend as much money and are more, financially frugal, and they're not spending and they're not getting into debt, then a lot of these companies, wouldn't they struggle? Wouldn't our economy begin to struggle?
It is not your patriotic duty to be broke for the sake of the economy. It's not.
Right.
And sure, if people, let's just talk about society as a whole
Like
here.
if we did have that switch.
If we had to switch 350 million Americans all of a sudden became very financially smart, they became very financially educated, they no longer borrowed money to go out and buy Gucci.
We'd be out of a job, first off.
Oh, we'd be teaching people how to invest, how to grow that wealth, right? But things would change because a lot of our audience is financially educated. But the change that you would see is you'd see people stop spending money for a little while. You see spending slow down. If spending slows down, the economy slows down. Companies make less money, and that would be bad on paper. It depends on which side of the argument you're on, who you're looking at. But it's great for people because now people would have the ability to build wealth, and as people became wealthier, they'd be able to spend more money and be able to afford it with cash. We didn't have a society that was always built around debt. That's a new thing. And so things would switch.
New when we switched to the gold standard, as you were kind of talking about before.
Switched off the gold standard?
Yeah, switching from using gold as kind of collateral for our money.
Even before, yeah, I mean, yeah, and even after that, I mean, debt has become much more accessible now. You know, for example, with credit cards. Credit cards weren't always a thing.
Right.
They weren't always very popular. They became really popular in the last couple of decades.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're seeing the growth of new forms of credit cards, things like buy now, pay later, which allow you to finance anything that you buy online.
Yeah,
you don't even need a credit card to
crazy.
do that. And so you're seeing a shift in that. And it's technology that makes it better, makes credit more accessible, which is good if you know what you're doing. It can also bite you in the butt if you don't know what you're doing.
Right, right. So to kind of round out the conversation here, so what would you say to the person that, you know, we talked about side hustles, we talked about some things that they can do. What would you say, though, to the person that it feels like they're doing everything right? They're working 2 jobs, you know, they've got mouths to feed, they're still drowning in debt, though.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person that, you know, we talk about having time, but getting a side hustle and doing some of these jobs, it takes time.
Right.
And somebody that's working 60 hours a week, they don't have time to say, well, I'm going to go get a side hustle. But they've got kids. They've got a family. They've got to be with their family sometime too.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say to that person?
Well, right now what you got to do is you got to get your money in order. Every single person has expenses that they can cut. Cut down the things that you don't need. You got kids that you got to feed. Good. Take care of your family. That's your number one duty. But take out the stuff that you don't need. Downsize. Maybe you live in a smaller apartment. Maybe you sell your car, you buy something used. Everybody has things that they can downsize on, that you can cut your expenses on. Yeah, your families might have to make some sacrifices. Maybe you're not going on that vacation this year that you wanted to go on. Maybe you're not buying all those gifts for Christmas that you wanted to buy. You're going to have to make some sacrifices. It's painful. People say, oh, what do you mean? You don't want me to celebrate Christmas? Look, you got to make the financial sacrifices for the things that you want.
Right.
Then you sell some stuff. You know, I talked about potentially selling your car, potentially selling your home, potentially downsizing in your apartment. There's a bunch of junk in your house that if you sold right now, you could probably get at least a couple $1,000s, maybe $5,000, depending on how much junk you have sitting there that's collecting dust. Sell that.
Right.
Now you're going to have some extra cash. Take this extra cash. If you have a lot of high interest debt, pay that off. If you don't, start investing that money. Get a little investment boost. Then you will continue working hard at your job. When you get a raise, you don't raise your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
You take the extra income and you use all of that extra money to now invest. And now you're going to start building your cushion, right? You need to have some savings, but then you got to invest aggressively. That way you can build your wealth. So that's the way you do it, man. It's not easy.
Yeah,
It's not easy. The majority of people will not be able to do it, but it is possible.
You got to make it a priority.
You need the right education.
You got to have that education and then decide that that's exactly what you want to do.
Thank you, man. Good questions today,
I
Nathan.
love it.
I love
Yeah,
this topic. You
absolutely.
get me riled up talking about this type of stuff.
This is fun. This is fun, man.
Yeah,
I
guac
like
talk,
this.
right? Guac talk.
Yeah, this is
Well,
perfect.
If you enjoyed more stuff like this, check out the rest of the videos on our channel. Check out Nathan at Minority Mindset News. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, here's a video on things you should not do when you get paid that I think you love. And while you're at it, download our free guide on how to start generating passive income. And as always, keep hustling. The fourth way, and probably the most common way that people become wealthy, is again a combination of 4 and 5, but it goes into education. I'm speaking more of kind of like your traditional education,